Hello, welcome back to the studio. This week we're doing something great for a beginner. It's how to take a photograph, turn it into a line drawing, and then through a process of using oil paints with thinners, we can create a sketch. Once we have the finished sketch, of course, then we can progress it into a finished painting. But it's a quick shorthand way of finding out if a painting is actually going to work before you put so much time into it. So settle back and get those notepads out and we'll get painting. So this week I'm working on a 12 by 16 canvas and we're doing sketching this week, so maybe not a full painting but certainly a sketch of this lovely subject. Now this is obviously off my printer and I'll bring up a nice clear image for you to look at as we go through the painting. And this is a still taken from someone else's video, a lovely video I watched by another YouTuber, and this was a photograph that I've just grabbed from his video, and with his permission, very kindly, I'm going to try and do something with this in terms of a lovely sketch. And really the whole point of this video this week is to get you used to the idea that you sometimes just have to work up a painting that starts out as literally a photograph onto a sketch and then use that as the basis maybe for another painting. That not everything we paint has to be a masterpiece every single time. You just need to kind of just do a little bit of exercise without actually having to do a full-blown painting every single time. And I think that's one of the things we have to try and keep in mind when we're learning to paint. So what have I done? I took my photograph and I reduced it to a black and white image, and I played around on my photo editor, which is something very easy to do. Most computers will do it if you can do it. And I simply took this and I broke it down into simple chunks. So I just turn it into a black and white and I just draw some simple lines. I've divided it up into background, midground and foreground. Literally, there is a line through here that is for these trees to stand on. Their reflections are cast on this bit, which is some lovely colour. These trees come through into that area. This is the midground, and this tree stands on the foreground. There's some squiggly lines here because this is where all the light is in the background of my painting. And this is quite a key thing to learn to do when you're starting to work from photographs or when you're doing plein air. That's what the French call painting outdoors. When you're standing there trying to paint something, is that you can get just overwhelmed with the amount of detail. There you go. So you're training your eyes to see your subject. As much as you're training yourself to be a painter, you're training your eyes to see the subject with some clarity. So let's get this simple sketch onto my canvas and then we'll start playing around with some paint. The main focus, the star of the show, is that lovely tree, and I had this one sitting absolutely dead center. So just draw a line midway through. And we have this line here. How far is that line? Because I'm going to drop in this line next. That's maybe just a little higher than halfway, just maybe somewhere over there. And it ends up just a little less than halfway on the other side. So somewhere down about here. So this is all I'm going to do, is I'm going to drop in just these basic lines. And again, I keep going back and I look at my reference picture. And as I say, this is a sketch, it's an exercise to do. That line there is about halfway between these two, so somewhere in here maybe, about halfway. And definitely towards the top half up here. And again, you're just sketching here with nothing special. So there's those two lines in. Those two lines there. Not perfect, it doesn't have to be. And I think there's another line somewhere in here that we discovered, wasn't there? There's another line there. Again. So there we have it. We know that the light is somewhere up in the background here. I'm not going to draw this in too strongly, but just to get an idea of where it might be. Not going off quite off doesn't quite go off the corner. Corner's a bit of a dodgy area on a painting. So you go down under, so you go either under or over. Corners are strange, they're kind of like, they're like eye magnets. They take your eye to the corner and off the painting. So as artists, we tend to want to avoid corners. We either make them dark or we don't make anything there, or we put a tree over it. So there we have it. There's my basic background sketch done. Literally, how long did it take me to do that? Let's see with the camera. How many minutes did I take on that? Well, about 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes to do the whole of this bit. Now I can concentrate on the main theme, which is the tree, of course. Let's have a look and see how wide it is. Well, it takes up a good amount of the top of our painting here, doesn't it? It's going to go from there to there. I'm not talking about the straggly bits, I'm just talking about the main bit. And look at the shape of it. It's like a lovely goblet, isn't it? It sort of comes in at the sides. Ah, that's it. Maybe a bit wider there. Just above that line. You see that line we drew? Is where it kind of nips in. That's sort of the waist of the tree. So it's kind of in there. And then it spreads out again. And this, of course, is on a lovely angle. So let's draw in a lovely angle. That angle there probably matches very similar to the background. So we know what that is. Let's draw that angle there. And then we can come down. Draw, and there we go. What do you reckon? I don't think that's too bad. Maybe it's a little straighter here, but again, you've got the basic shape on there, so there's a lovely curve there. You see, so I just hold my pencil. I'm holding this actually at arm's length. I'm sitting quite far back from my canvas here. And I hope you can see that all I have done here is I have tried to distill, or just to get the essence of my tree shape. Some of these limbs are a little cranky, a little odd. Again, don't aim for the corner. And very quickly, I have managed to produce what I think will be the basis for a nice painting with very, very little effort and nothing more than just a few abstract lines. So there you have it. The idea here is not to get bogged down with all the detail in the background. We can get to that if we need to. The idea is to break it down into nice, simple lines, a nice big subject. Find one of your own to paint, but I will actually list the photograph actually in the description and put it onto my Pixabay site, so you've got it there. I'll get permission for that. So that you can paint it, but if not, I'll try and find some trees like this for you to do that are copyright free. Now I've got that, I can consider what I'm going to do with this background and start using a brush. If you're enjoying this tutorial, don't forget, you can give it a little like, you could even subscribe, you could definitely leave me a lovely comment. Now back to the painting. What I'm doing is I'm just giving this part of my drawing a little more weight. Whilst it's just airy-fairy lines, you can't really see very much, but as soon as you start putting some weight into it, you start actually using your pencil to drop in some stronger shapes. So off camera there, I just did a little bit more filling in. All I did is I literally filled in a couple more of these branches and just sort of thickened up one or two here. They're not perfect again, but I just wanted to put a little bit more colour into the trunk area so that you could sort of really keep an eye on what's happening here. Now, something a little different this week. I get asked questions a lot of the time about using acrylic paint. Could I have used a coloured acrylic? Which is, yes, definitely you could use coloured acrylics for backgrounds. I've done it many times in paintings. Bob used to do it occasionally. The last painting I used black and white because, well, that's what Bob used. I literally followed Bob's instructions and painted a black and white background. I could have used colour. But I also get asked questions about using oil paint for the whole process, not using acrylics. And today's picture is going to be an oil sketch. So again, here's the reference picture. It's not particularly good because it was taken from literally captured from a video. But I actually want to do this as an oil painting, but in sketch form. So what do I mean by sketch? Well, here's my palette, colours you're familiar with: titanium white, phthalo blue, alizarin crimson, black, Van Dyke brown, dark sienna, sap, cad yellow, Indian yellow, red and ochre. So colours you've seen me use many times. But instead of putting something like a Bob Ross liquid clear or even using linseed oil on my canvas, this week I'm going to be using some low odour thinners. Now, again, this is just a bottle that was donated to me and I'm using it up. I also like to use Zest It, which is another brand. And I've got a little dish of odourless thinners here, just a little drop. You see, I'm actually going to use odourless thinners to create a wash, but not a watercolour wash, an oil colour wash. And for my brushes, well, just a selection of cheap brushes. These are ones I've used many times before, and they're great for doing a bit of stippling, a bit of rough work, and of course a nice dagger brush there, lovely for doing tree trunks, and a little flat square brush. And I might get a line brush out as well, but I don't think so. I'm going to stick to using bigger brushes. So let's work on our painting using oil washes, and I'll explain. As always, we work on things furthest away first. So I want to work on this background sky, this bright pale colour in the background here. It's not quite white, it's got a little bit of a lavender hint to it, but very subtle. So I need a slightly purplish, almost off-white colour. Now, I'm painting on a grey canvas. You know, I always use a neutral grey canvas so that I can make a light colour show up. If I was painting on a white canvas, well, I'd be stuck with this bright canvas here and everything glaring at me. So a grey canvas is what I'm using. So let's take this oil brush, get a little drop, tiny little drop of odourless thinners. And I'm going to make a wash of white. Let's add a tiniest little drop of alizarin crimson into it. I knew there would be trouble. Look at that stinker there. I knew you were going to cause me trouble. So they've got a pinkish colour, very pale pink. And you can see it's a very runny wash. Let's add a speck of blue into it. Blue and crimson make a lovely purple colour. And you see I'm working sort of slowly further and further away here, aren't I? I'm looking for a very soft lavender colour, very, very soft indeed. I'm going to have to fix this. This is getting on my wick. That's better. I put a bit of paper towel under it. So back to my very soft, just off-white colour. It's quite purpley, doesn't it? Let's see it actually against my canvas though. Remember, there's that big wedge of light here in the background. And I'm going to just start off with some of this colour here now. Remember, it's a wash, so it's very thin and runny. It's going to dissolve some of my graphite from the paper. Remember, this is a piece of paper canvas I've prepared. And the colour doesn't look a lot different to the background. Maybe it needs to be just a touch whiter. And again, still, it's just a wash. This is very, very thin, oily paint. And in fact, it's an incredibly warm day here today. It's very, very humid and hot, which means to say my canvas is drying out almost as I'm talking. But not so quickly that I can't actually do a bit of blending. The other fun thing is, of course, you can rub things out. Now, as I say, I'm just going to block this in here. I'm picking up some of the graphite. I'm not worried. It's a sketch. If it's not exactly like the photograph, I don't care. I'm just looking to practice painting without really getting into too much of a fuss with it all. And there we go. Now then, I keep looking back at my reference picture and I'm looking at all these lovely light patches in the sky. I know I've got lots of green over here, so I'm not worried about smudging in a bit of graphite there. But there's some light colour under here I need to be looking at. There's lots of lovely light colours down the side of the trunk here as well. So again, you keep looking back at your reference picture. Keep that steady trickle of thinners going into your paint. I think this is going to be quite bright and light through here as well. I'm going to leave this to sit for about 5, maybe 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and start adding more layers of colour on top. So here's my canvas 10 or 15 minutes later. As you can see, it's already started to dry. It means I can carry on adding colour straight on top. Now, let's have a look at this reference photograph again. There's a beautiful sort of yellowish glow here, a nice yellowish glow there. Now, again, I'm just looking for blocks of colour. I'm not looking for any details. There's a nice green through here, this lovely streak of orange, but I just want to start working in a little bit of a nice yellowish sort of glow into here. I gave my brush a quick dry clean. I'm going to go straight into some Indian yellow. Now this is a very transparent yellow colour. A little drop of thinners with it to make it into a wash. Let's add a little touch of white into it. See if we can get ourselves a nice very pale yellow wash. Not sure if that's the right colour. Not bad. Again, I'll bring the reference picture up in the corner there. So this is just a warm yellow glow down beside the tree. As I go, I'm going to maybe add a little bit more white into it here. So just looking for blocks of colour. There's a little bit of a yellowish golden glow. I think that could have a little bit more of a golden look to it maybe in there. Let's add a little bit more Indian yellow into it. Yes, I like that. It's got that nice glow. Again, look at your reference picture. Remember where the line is here and where the colours sit in relation to that line. Keep looking back at your reference photograph, training your eyes all the time to see what your painting is going to be. It goes straight into there. It's got a lovely glow through there. It's a beautiful glow up here that looks like some leaves from the tree. They're catching that light. Again, it's sort of up in here, isn't it? It starts going more blue-grey over in here again. So you see I've managed to build that brightness through into here. I think that having done that, I think my sky could probably be a little brighter. Let's go add a little bit more white. Again, tiny drop of thinners into this just to kind of lighten the colour up again, make it a little bit more of a wash. You see, I'm just going to bring that colour up a little bit brighter. Okay, I want to start working in this area here again. There's some nice greens in here, and then we're moving into these oranges. So let's have a look at our palette and see what colours we can make. That beautiful orange colour. Well, my choice is always Indian yellow and a touch of bright red, and it makes it instantly. It makes a beautiful, warm, rich orange colour. It doesn't take much red, and if you want to kind of add another little dimension to it, you can even take a little touch of dark sienna. It gives you sort of a lovely rusty orange colour, a colour with a little bit more kind of bite to it, so you get almost like a burnt orange colour. Take a little bit drop of the Indian yellow into that. Doesn't that look great? That's a real lovely rustic orange colour. Again, I've not mixed up a ton of paint. In fact, there isn't much paint on my palette for this painting because these are all going to be thin washes. I think what I'll do is I'll work on some of the green colours. I've got another brush here, a little touch of the odorless thinners straight into some nice green, touch of cad yellow here. Again, look at that, you can see I've got the light. It's not running with thinners, but it is definitely wet. Keep your reference photograph at hand. And I'm just going to block this in. Ooh, that looks really violently green, doesn't it? Really, ooh, really powerful green colour. Too powerful, I think. But let's just start off by just banging some of this in here. It's got to pick up some of the colour from underneath as well. think it's got a little bit of that going through there. Could be some of that on the tree trunk, but in the process of doing that, look what I did. I put some of that on there, picked up some of the charcoal, graphite rather, charcoal. Here we go, I put a little bit of graphite into there. Okay. Now, don't worry too much about the colours being a little bit violent, a bit too potent. Remember, being a wash of colours, we can come back in here and we can tint it all with another wash of a different colour. Big brush washing routine to get them clean enough. I'm going to go straight into some of that lovely rich orangey colour here. There we go. Again, a little drop of thinners on my brush. There. And let's introduce a little of that orange colour through in here. Whew, isn't that beautiful? Gosh, that's lovely. I think it's actually more orange in here. If it hits the green, it's going to make a nice tobacco brown colour. Again, just drop in a few suggestions. There's some lovely light under that tree back in there. In fact, this is all kind of patchwork quilts of splotches of light. There we go. I like this colour a lot. This is a good fun colour. I may put more in than there is in the painting, in the reference photograph. And you know, it's okay. It's absolutely okay to do that. If you've got a colour and you think, I like it, and I want that colour in more of my painting, it's absolutely fine. In fact, in this area through here, there's the foreground. Don't lose your position here because there's actually more green in here. There's actually a lot of lovely colour through here. I might actually just clean my brush off a little bit. Again, don't waste that paint, just use it up. Just throw a little bit onto the tree trunk here. Again, see what happens as soon as the thinners hits that graphite. It all sort of starts combining together. And it's one of the fun things about working with pencil and oil paint is that you can actually turn your graphite into part of the painting. You don't have to always do everything with just oil paint. So I left my painting for an hour or two, went away and had something to eat, and I've come back, and as you can see, the thinners has evaporated and left this very thin oily layer on my painting that's practically dry. If you rub it, yes, you can still lift a little bit of colour. But you see, by using thinners as opposed to using an oil-based medium to try and thin the paint down, by using thinners, what happens is the thinners evaporates and it quickly dries the paint to the canvas, which means that we can add more layers of paint more quickly. We can paint more detail on top without it all mixing together. So really this is the opposite of a wet on wet. This is like wet on dry, or wet on slightly dry, or wet on almost dry. We can build up layers more quickly in the form of this sketch. So where next? Let's work in the foreground a little bit more. There's a beautiful rich golden brown colour through here which I want to work in next. And I'm probably going to go for the mid colour, so not the darkest, not the lightest, but somewhere in between. The colours I'm going to use, I think I'm going to use a little bit of this dark sienna colour. And a little bit of the Indian yellow mixed in with it. Just want a thin wash again of a nice reddish brown colour. And if we look, this all goes sort of through here. There's a nice big patch of dark through there. And again, I'm looking back at my reference picture again to see if I can get, if my lines are in the right place, I can adjust things. I think this is probably a little higher up. Through there. And sort of follows through on the other side. This line here, I think is slightly in the wrong position maybe. I think she should have been slightly higher up. So So as you see, we can adjust as we go. We don't have to be slaves to our sketchwork and our drawings. They are merely for placement. And I'll do a little bit more work through here, and I'll do that with some time lapse. So I've toned this area with various mixtures of dark sienna, a little Van Dyke brown coming into there as well, just to darken the areas up. There's a couple of shadows in here, but I'm going to lift some of this colour off as well to get a bit of a highlight. But I want to just put in a little bit of dark just for the shadow behind the tree. Remember, the light's coming from the other side of the tree, so I'm going to go into a little touch of black and a little touch of Van Dyke brown, a very deep dark chocolatey colour. I also quite like using purple colours for shadows. Maybe we should do that. That's an idea, isn't it? Hang on a minute, I'm going to mix up a purple colour and we'll use purples instead of dark blacks and browns. See what happens. Okay, I grabbed a little phthalo blue and some alizarin crimson and mixed them together. About 5 parts crimson, 1 part blue, gets me a nice sort of mid-lavender colour, sort of a very deep sort of dark lavender tone here. And I'm going to put some of that into my painting. Okay, let's put some of this lavender colour into the back of my tree and let it mix in with all the other lovely tones and colours on there. I'm keeping that bit of bright green there for the light coming through from the back. Now I will change that because I don't think it looks quite right. And doing little changes and repairs, quite simply pick up a piece of paper towel or kitchen roll and you can just wipe things out. For instance, there's some beautiful lights coming across here that I want to get back. I can just simply wipe off the paint, like so. You can make amendments and adjustments with this style of painting very simply. You can make quick changes to the way things look in your paintings. There we go. So you can do sort of like, it's like a form of shorthand, isn't it? There we go. So again, some quick changes there. See if I can change my painting around a bit more. I might darken this a bit more with some put a little bit more black through here, but I quite like that purplish tone in there, just for a bit of fun. I'm also going to add some more shades and shadows and colours of various greens into here as well. And again, I'm going to use a little bit of time lapse to this because really what I'm doing is I'm just playing with colour. There's no specific thing I'm teaching here, just to give you the demonstration. In that last little session, you saw how I started looking a little more carefully at some of the details in this background. I went on from using blocks of colour to actually starting to describe or look at the shapes of things like trees. I kind of roughly sketched in this tree and I roughly sketched in that tree. They may not be exactly in the same position in the photograph as they are in the painting, so I moved things around to suit me. I darkened up this edge here because I didn't want your eye straying out the side. I cut that end off, you see. I put a few little patches of green here on the ground, and I've preserved a few of my little touches of orange. I might have lost that little bright ridge there, but I can put that back, it's easy. But on this side again, I'm looking at the background foliage in here. Behind these trees, it's on another bank. There's a lovely burst of dark green in here and a bit of bright green through here. So the process of sketching here, what I'm doing is I'm slowly mapping out my painting. And I haven't even painted a background tree yet. That might come very soon though. But do I paint all of them? No. I might put in a few of them, but not all. And maybe a few of these nice sort of shadows across the ground. But I think as far as the sketch is going, it's coming on quite well. It's time to stand back though and have a good look at it. There are a few shapes in here which I think need a bit of refining. So I've moved you a long way away, you're about 6 foot away from the canvas, somewhere in between. And again, I want you to sort of see these things with some distance involved, so you don't sort of sit right on top of it through the camera, you're seeing it from a distance back. And you can start to see now how suddenly these shadow lines are starting to sort of form up. I have to be careful of those angles. These are fairly shallow. Look at that angle there. So I have to make sure that I'm a similar sort of angle. So this is a bit more upright. I need to come a little further across. And I know that I need to darken some of these areas up. But again, when you're sitting very close to your painting, you don't see these things. I can also see I need to darken this area up here. And this could be a little darker as well. So I need to start really increasing some of the dark values in here and not losing some of the lights. Standing back from your painting gives you a really good appreciation that things in here that we might look at for detail actually don't really exist until much, much later in the painting, if at all. Again, I'm getting to get you to look at blocks of colour rather than detail at this stage. So let's go back and darken up some of these areas. I think maybe start putting some colour on this tree, because this is really distracting us. So, and it's nice to actually use a colour from here. It's a little bit strong, so I'll put it on a bit too strong here. But actually take some of this colour here and actually use it somewhere else in the painting, so that your painting sort of looks quite harmonious. And this is something I talk about when I'm teaching you and trying to give you some insight into what I think I'm doing. The one thing that I've come to know is that if you have just one colour that's isolated to only one part of your painting, it'll always stand out as being slightly odd. Unless it's a particular thing like a red car or something like or a black cab. But when you're painting sort of in nature, take a little colour from here and put it somewhere else in the scene. It somehow brings the whole painting together a little more. But these, again, are little things that you learn and you pick up as you go along. Now, I'm going to put in a little bit of background detail, not much at this stage, just the odd tree trunk. I just need to kind of get a couple of the reflections on here. And then I really will put some colour on this tree. For my background trees, I'm going to use my little dagger brush. And the really distant ones here are just not at all bright. So I'm taking a little touch of white. I'm just looking for a sort of a murky brown colour, not particularly any kind of colour at all. It's that sort of, I don't know, it's vague milk chocolate sort of colour. Then little touch of fizz into it. I just want this paint to be just soft and easy to manipulate. And again, I'm just looking for something in the background. Let's have a quick test here and say these trees are not that colour, are they? That's almost too light. That's looking a little better. Again, I'm just going to pick out some of these trees now, and it casts a nice shadow across the ground here, and then it casts a shadow here. Okay, so let's darken it up a little tiny bit. And it does that strange thing where it actually casts a shadow. Looks like it's casting a shadow the wrong direction, doesn't it? Because the other shadow over here is actually going that way. And that's from a tree that's leaning the other direction. Isn't that bizarre that anybody else would draw that shadow going that way and that one going that way, and the one next to it coming back the other way, because that tree leans. Isn't that odd? Now, if you hadn't seen that on a photograph, you might have thought I had lost it. You might have thought, hey, he's lost his touch. You don't know what he's doing. But there you go. Look at the photograph, and there's my shadows coming together in the background. All odd angles here. So because these trees are leaning. Now, the question is, $64,000 question here. Do you do it as the photograph does it? Or do you say to yourself, it's not quite believable. I'm not sure if I painted that anybody would really accept that as being the way it really is. Would people sort of say, oh, you got your reflections and your shadows all wrong there, didn't you? And that's definitely a possibility, that people will look at your work and judge it because they won't see it with the photograph next to it. They'll look at this and they'll maybe jump to a conclusion that's not quite right. And these things happen sometimes. People often judge our work without the benefit of having the reference photograph there. In fact, they always judge us without a reference photograph, don't they? And that can be harsh sometimes, because I think sometimes the criticism, although maybe well meant, can dent us a little bit, can't it? We get kind of put off because people say something and they don't mean to be nasty, but they don't realise that sometimes that we have slaved for hours and hours and hours, maybe even days, on a painting, simply for someone to come along and absent-mindedly point to something and say, well, yeah, they got that one wrong, didn't they? Not realising just how much effort you put into it. So, you have to forgive people sometimes that they don't always understand that what they're doing is actually really taking your ego for granted, and they're sort of putting a big bit of a dent in it. But, well, I'm afraid that's art for you. Again, I'm just extending a few of these trees up into here. Again, I'm not going to go too mad with this. These trees, so they're just over the other side of a bank here. They're not particularly big trees. There's a whole bunch of stuff happening in the background as well. And I'm just literally using my dagger brush on the edge. I'm going to drop in some of this in here. Yeah, I think I don't want these to become too big. And I'll think about this in here. It may not stay that way. While I'm doing it, let's drop some colour into this tree. As I said, I made a purpley brown colour in here. I think I got my colour slightly wrong. I got a bit too much crimson in there. I think I needed a bit more blue in it, to be honest. If I'm honest with you, I think I got a bit mad with my colour. I put a bit more blue in me. I think a bit more of a bluish colour here. And that's pretty lavender, but with a very much bluer kind of colour there. I think that's a nicer shadow with a bit of a purplish tint, but a bit more blue purple than to the red side of things. So there you go. Another example of the reasons why we sketch things out and we play with our colour combinations. Yeah, it's quite dark now. It looks pretty dark from where you're sitting. It looks very dark from where I'm sitting, and even though we know it's actually purple, on your painting it can look almost like a dark chocolate brown colour, and certainly a lovely warm shadow. And I'm going to take a little bit of Van Dyke brown and work that in with it. There we are. So our painting has gained a little something. And again, I'll just do a little bit of work on this. I'll add a little bit more detail into here, and I'm going to start working on making some of these tree branches a little more defined. Now, I stopped a little short there of putting any more branches on my tree, because I realised I've got to do something with this background here. There are a bunch of trees in here, and they all end up on this little bank above the bright spots of light on the ground up here. And again, lots and lots and lots of little distant trees. Again, perfect excuse to use this little dagger brush. they're not the strongest coloured trees. The trunks are sort of a light brownish colour, and we're painting against quite a pale background colour here, so we can actually get these to work quite well. Again, these are the tree trunks going right up into here. So again, I'm gonna just put a few in here, but I'm gonna make sure that the trunks extend up into these trees here. I'm not just gonna have this, because that just looks like a bunch of fence posts. You've got to have a few of them going up a little taller. So here's my little painting so far, and as a sketch, it's doing what I want it to do. You see, by doing a quick sketch like this, and I've probably spent maybe an hour on this, I've been able to prove to myself that, one, I like the composition, I like the colours. I found a few pitfalls, like these shadows across the ground. And it's only taken me, as I say, about an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes to get this far with it. Now, I would rather do this and find all those little pitfalls really quickly than maybe spend days or even months working on a painting, only to realise halfway through that really it doesn't work as a good painting. Using these little sketching techniques is crucial sometimes to prove whether a painting is viable or not. And whilst it looks a little bit still rough and ready, I've learnt so much about the painting that I might paint based upon what I'm doing. I could call it finished at this stage and leave it, and then do a much bigger painting, which would be probably what most professional artists would do. They would work this up into something much bigger. But I know that you like to see this painting progressed a little further to make it look more like a finished piece of work. I also have to remember that last week I actually did a painting and I completely forgot to put in some little silver birch trees. Maybe I'll put a clip in of that at the very end of this video as a little bit of a catch-up. So I'm going to spend maybe another half an hour, 45 minutes on this painting just to increase the quality of the work. But remember, this is a sketch, so if I go offline a little bit, it's more to do something that I wanted to look rather than being a slave to those reference photographs. Anyway, let's chat from me. Let's get back into the painting. I keep fighting to finish this tree, and then keep looking at the background and thinking that we needed a little bit more there. Like, I so want to put that branch across there. And that's another one of those little things, isn't it? We're in such a hurry to finish a painting. But I realise, looking back at my painting now, that I probably do need to put a little bit more darkness in the background here. Incidentally, this is my painting. It's sat overnight. So now it is all totally dry. And I can paint straight on top. Nothing's going to lift. Again, I'm going to continue just working a little bit of thinners into my paint. Just a little drop. So again, I'm just going to add some stronger detail. I think I just want to increase the amount of green to my background. These trees in particular look a little bit underwhelming, don't they? I think my paint's dried out on my palette here. I think I need to top this up. Give me a moment, I'll do that. But I just want to come back in here and just suggest a little bit more detail. And here, all I'm doing is I'm going to just stipple this on. It's just a classic sort of Bob Ross technique here, using the bristles of the brush to add tons of detail without having to work at it too hard. I know Bob's techniques were the product of many other artists who did similar techniques down through the ages, but Bob had a way of bringing it all to life, didn't he? And I hope that a little bit of what I'm doing is sort of continuing that sort of theme that Bob started off or reimagined with his Joy of Painting TV show. You know, I'm still looking back at my reference picture. It's just out of shot. Now there's a beautiful burst of light through here that I want to increase. So I need to add a little more shadow to the side of here to make that show up, make the areas either side of it darker. You see, rather than trying to make that brighter, you make the areas beside it darker. And suddenly you can make that appear to be brighter than it really was. And I will add a little bit more brightness to there as well. Okay, I've added a little more paint to my palette. I'm going to tone these down. They look a little bit ferocious. Anytime I want to dull a colour, my go-to, if the green is a little on the bright side, ochre is a great dulling colour. It really knocks the vibrance off of things. If you want to make your painting look a little less sort of startlingly bright, then you can just add a little ochre to the whole thing, and it will reduce it down. I might just take a little bit. That's a bit of a hard line through there. That lump of paint there got me in trouble again. Get off. Again, that line there looks a little bit harsh again. So maybe I want just put something more of a sort of a zigzag through into there again. I look for these sorts of lines on my painting just to sort of make sure that there's nothing too harsh and symmetrical. Because if this is where the light's coming through, the shade's going to be darkest at the edges, so you'd naturally expect these sides to be darker and brightest in the centre. And I might even be tempted to close off that little exit point there for the eye. There we go, just a small change. I really am going to work on this tree now, and I'm going to do some time lapse through that. I'm just using Van Dyke brown, black, maybe a touch of my purple colour through here. And I just want to put in the basic structure, but really kind of complete that part of my painting. I might come through here and put some highlights in later. And all of this is going to be just done, again, stippled on with various colours, ochres, Indian yellow, ochre, white, some Van Dyke browns, just get a little bit more texture through this area. But again, I'm going to do it all with some time lapse. I'm just using a very mucky off-white sort of colour here, a bit of beigey, almost beige colour here. And my tree again has dried completely. And what I really want to do just to sort of split up this mass of trunk into sort of some different layers, some at the back, some at the front here. So I might just suggest that this is just a little further forward. Just run my finger along that just to sort of soften it in. And maybe put this branch at the back by just bringing a little bit of, just a hint of colour. So just putting a little bit of highlight there in front and just breaking that through. And again, I'm just literally using my dagger brush here with almost no paint on it, and just putting in just the suggestion of a little something going on. And again, you can be very, very loose with this. You don't have to be too sort of strict with it. I'd say maybe I want to bring this piece here forwards. So I'll just take, again, just some really grubby, almost off-white colour here. Maybe I'll just make this section here just sort of pop forwards a little bit. And this is a lot of fun, just kind of working on trees. And you can move them around in your painting very, very easily this way. Okay. I can get too symmetrical with everything. It's very easy to get into symmetry. One thing I probably will do is I'll probably, where the light comes past the edge of this tree, I think the edge might be a little softer here. Maybe not quite so sharp. You tend to find that as light passes, sort of strong, sort of solid objects, it casts a little bit of a, Bob called it referred light. In other words, a little bit of light as it comes past the edge tends to sort of create a bit of a sort of a halo effect almost. Don't want to get too much of that going in there, but you see what I mean. You can just sort of accentuate parts of your tree. And in my hand I've also got my little flat brush. Yeah, I just happened to pick this up. It's the one that's clean and dry. And I've got on here some cad yellow, a little touch of Indian yellow and some sap green. You could even put a little touch of phthalo green in there, but gotta be careful. Now then, let's get that little pop of light on the foot. Again, just going to stipple this on here. And if the colour's not right, stop and change your colours again, rather than putting it all on there and then deciding it didn't work. And again, this is sort of nice, lumpy, bumpy moss. And because, of course, my canvas is completely dry, this colour will go on and it will stay brilliant and sharp. And as I come around the tree, obviously I want this to get a little darker. So I'm not going to put so much paint on my brush. So as it comes around, it starts to work into the shadows. There's a lovely little pop of light back in here too. Lime green, I'll just put that in. Do I want another little pop of light? It looks like it's kind of trapped between those two trees. I don't want it to look like it's kind of held in too much, so I'm going to just let this colour spread along that bank. There we go, so you just kind of let it spread a little bit. Maybe a little touch of it there too. But I think I want to leave it now because I've got everything I want from this painting. I've got my colours, I've got the overall arrangement. I know how it's going to work out if I did this again as a bigger painting. So time to stand away from our painting and see what it looks like from the other side of the room. So there we have it. A great way for a beginner to get from a photograph to a painting in nice easy steps. But don't move, there's some more lovely videos for you to watch coming right along. Happy painting, people. Ooh, and don't forget, if you want to find out how those little silver birches did, I made a little separate video for you just in case. Happy painting, people.